Twilight Sparkle is a highly intelligent, dedicated, friendly, and respectable pony. She spends vast amounts of her time devoted to her studies. She is also a very powerful magical savant. From an early age, she showed immense potential, so much so that she became the personal student to Princess Celestia. Twilight managed to achieve her dream of learning magic when she was only a filly, but she has never taken that exceptional opportunity for granted. She works herself hard, very hard, reading countless books, practicing her magic on a daily basis, expanding her skills whenever and wherever possible. She also has a knack for looking past the surface to see the real issue. This is particularly apparent during Nightmare Night, when Twilight is the only one in all of Ponyville to actually try and talk to Princess Luna after her first appearance. Considering just how long the Princess of the Night has been away from Equestria, it is no surprise that she is lacking in social skills. And it also doesn't help that many ponies still see her as Nightmare Moon. Luna had come to Ponyville expecting to celebrate the holiday that was named after her, and instead she has run into a brick wall. Even though Twilight does show a little hesitation, she really wants to connect with Luna and help her learn to be social. She takes her around town, taking part in activities and games, all the while giving Luna more opportunities to socialize. If ever there was an episode that teaches the moral of friendship, this would be it. Learning how to make friends can be a difficult prospect for some, but once you do learn that lesson, the best thing you can do with it is by helping others learn it as well. And we can see Twilight taking those steps here. Even though she started out as a pony that spent all her days studying, it is nice to see that she has come full circle by helping others break out of their shell. Twilight also has this need to understand everything around her, which makes her an excellent student. But this can also lead to one of her greatest weaknesses. Twilight has this deep-rooted need to feel that she is in control of her surroundings. But whenever she starts to lose that control, she begins to overwhelm herself and others to get it back again. We first start to see this during Swarm of the Century, when the parasprites have grown so numerous there seems to be no way to keep them from devouring everything in sight. But it is understandable to see someone stress out in that kind of situation. However, in Lesson 0, we see Twilight stressing out over a much smaller issue. Or it would be if Twilight's paranoia didn't keep thinking up the worst possible consequences. We've all had a situation where we are about to miss a deadline. And we even see Twilight taking control and seeking a reasonable solution. At least, at first. When she is unable to find an answer, we can see the stress really getting to her. But she still takes the next most reasonable step by asking help from her friends directly. It is rather unfortunate that her friends seem to brush her off, but they really do have trouble believing that Twilight's circumstances are quite so dire. And when Twilight's paranoia is getting the better of her, and she can't depend on others for help, she reaches a mental break. And we can see just how desperate she becomes in order to solve her problem. In this episode, Twilight is learning a lesson about how she needs to keep her paranoia from making a problem into something far worse than it really is. But the more relevant lesson is actually the one her friends end up learning. Each of us would want others to feel that our issues and desires are important, even if they don't apply to others. It takes a lot of emotional maturity to be able to empathize with someone else's priorities, even if they seem inconsequential to us. But even with the lesson that Twilight is learning from Lesson 0, her paranoia can still get the better of her when she doesn't have all the answers. We see similar circumstances in It's About Time, when Twilight feels that she is the only one who can prevent an unknown disaster that will come in the near future. Granted, it would certainly overwhelm anyone to hear their future self warn them about an imminent catastrophe. But again, Twilight keeps herself under control and starts taking some precautions around town. At least, at first. When she realizes that her present self is starting to look more like her future self, her paranoia starts coming back in full force. Twilight is spending so much of her time trying to prevent the future that she is completely neglecting her present. This really seems like a serious issue for Twilight, when her need to micromanage is coming at the cost of her sanity. Of course, this episode also shows us the flip side of the issue at hand. Spike is following a philosophy of only caring about what happens in the present and isn't worrying about the future consequences. And in the middle of it all, we have Pinkie Pie, who is staying true to her normal, happy self while actually putting aside some precautions for the future at the same time. I like how this episode shows us three different viewpoints on how to handle an unknown future and the effects that it has on each of these characters. Twilight is learning a lesson about solving problems as they come and not worry about every little thing. Although she still has moments where she can stress out, Twilight is still taking steps here and there, now and again, about keeping her cool when she doesn't have all the answers. It may be difficult for her to overcome this weakness, but it is nice to see that she is willing to learn these lessons. It is also encouraging when we see Twilight displaying leadership in the face of despair. When Discord was released upon Equestria, the friendship of the main six was put to the test. One by one, Discord managed to pull the worst qualities out of each of the ponies. And once Twilight discovered that their goal was back in Ponyville, she rallies her friends and drives them forward. Even with all of them bickering and continuing to test her patience, Twilight is still trying to keep them together. It is only after the elements of harmony fail that Twilight begins to believe that all hope has been lost. She succumbs to Discord's influence and gives in to despair. Feeling that she has nothing left in Ponyville, she begins to pack away her things and move on, until she sees that Spike has been burping up all the letters that Twilight had written to the princess. As she is reading through her own words, she remembers all of the trials that her friends have had to face before, how they had always managed to come together and overcome their problems. And Twilight begins to realize just how much her friends are worth fighting for. What makes Twilight's transition here different from the rest of the main six is that she was able to find this strength by remembering her own lessons, and she manages to help the rest of her friends by helping them to achieve the same. But Twilight didn't need any memory spell to rejuvenate herself from Discord's influence. She only needed to read through the words that she had written herself. Twilight shows us a valuable lesson here with her determination to hold on to the friends that had become so precious to her. Even in the face of complete despair, she realized that despite the bickering and the hurt feelings, true friends will always be worth overcoming doubts. It was also very worthwhile seeing that Twilight is willing to put aside her own ambitions in the moments that matter the most. In the Crystal Empire, Celestia summons Twilight to Canterlot to give her a test. After Twilight's normal amount of overwhelming herself and her friends with stress, she is told that she must go and protect the Crystal Empire. And Celestia emphasizes that Twilight and only Twilight should do this. With an ancient evil looming on the horizon, the clock is ticking on Twilight to discover the Crystal Heart. Through some determination and her own ingenuity, Twilight overcomes the obstacles that stand in her way, searching the Empire's history for clues, uncovering some impressive illusions, even countering some dark magic with a bit of her own. It was also really fun to see her use a reverse gravity spell to reach the top of the tower. But when the Crystal Empire was about to fall under control of an ancient evil, Twilight put aside her own needs for the sake of others. Even with specific instructions from her mentor, Twilight made the right choice when it mattered most. But even more than that, the final episode of Season 3 shows us just how far Twilight has come on her journey. We have known from the very first episode just how much Celestia trusts in her student. We have seen Twilight overcome every obstacle in her path, and how Celestia's faith in her grew. We have seen their bond become stronger, with Twilight all the while becoming a better pony. And with Magical Mystery Cure, we have seen that Twilight's journey has reached the next step. And even with this transformation, we still see that she has much farther to go on her journey. I admit that when I first discovered that Twilight would become an Alicorn, I was actually rather intrigued. Everything that Twilight had gone through really did seem to be building to that moment. I knew that there would have to be great changes to the group dynamic in MLP, but considering all the possibilities that come with these changes, I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go with it. But even when I put aside the future possibilities of Alicorn Twilight Sparkle, I also really appreciated just how they put Twilight through her trials and tribulations. When you think about what kind of leader Twilight will be, you may start to realize that she has a few different priorities. She didn't begin her studies with the expectation of becoming a princess. She wanted to learn more about magic and its functions in Equestria. She didn't make friends because she was seeking Celestia's approval. She came to discover on her own just how powerful that bond can prove to be. And when danger was looming on the horizon, she did not seek to overcome that trial all on her own. She decided to put aside her mentor's instructions in favor of those who needed saving. Those who seek for power rarely become effective leaders. Instead, they often become despots to one degree or another. True leadership comes not from education, knowledge, nor experience, though these things certainly help. A great leader is one who shows the way and then steps forward boldly, putting him or herself into difficult situations right along with those who follow. You could compare it to rulers who did not begin their reign wearing a crown or sitting upon a throne, but instead working in the farming fields right alongside their subjects. Those who lead through effort and example first, and then given the trust and credibility to lead by word. All too often, power seekers tend to lead by spoken word only, and their credibility is either fragile or non existent. And though Twilight Sparkle does indeed try to lead by telling others what needs to be done, she also braves the difficulties and dangers herself to show the way. Twilight did not seek the position of princess. She didn't even realize that that was Celestia's goal for her. Instead, she was found worthy of becoming a leader by her actions and her convictions. And when you realize that her position came from her ideologies and not from a desire for power, you gain a far greater appreciation for her character. It is inspiring to see how much Twilight Sparkle has accomplished in the time we have spent with her. It is wonderful to know that she still stands for what is right. And it is uplifting to see how much the bond with her friends has helped her come so far. I look forward to seeing much more about Twilight Sparkle's journey. I await to see how much more she can uplift and inspire those who follow her. And I hope that many others can discover how the adorable bookworm became a worthy leader. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.